Professor Sylvia is a registered dietitian nutritionist, licensed dietitian nutritionist, and fellow of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. With extensive healthcare, management, academic, and consultative experiences, grant writing and management, leadership and direction of dietetic departments, dietetic internships, women, infants, and children programs, and author of numerous books, chapters, and articles, including nutrition and diagnosis-related care, crosses, food and the nutrition care process, foundations and clinical applications of nutrition, and top 100 skills for public health nutrition. Professor Escott-Stump holds a Bachelor of Science in Food and Nutrition and a Master's degree in Adult Communication Education, both from the Indiana University and Pennsylvania. Most of her academic experience was at East Carolina University, where she was Clinical Assistant Professor and Dietetic Internship Director. Since 1998, she has been owner and consultant at Nutritional Balance in Winterville, North Carolina, where she works with physicians, long-term care facilities, businesses, and educational organizations for workshops, programs, and services. Her professional services extend to the International Confederation of Dietetics Associations, where she belonged to the board of directors between 2011 and 2016. Furthermore, she has been a very active member of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, formerly the American Dietetic Association, where she worked in the Accreditation Council for Education in Nutrition and Dietetics, and was president of the Academy from 2011 to 2012. With great pleasure and honor, we welcome you as keynote speaker, Professor Sylvia Escott-Stump.
Thank you. I think I'm tired now. Thank you. Okay. Okay. And I'm sitting because I had knee surgery 3 weeks ago, so I'm still kind of limping, but I'm getting better. I'm getting better. Good nutrition. And people tell me, like, you're how old? It's good nutrition, isn't it? Yes, it is. all those things have, made me old, right? Okay, thank you. Okay, so the question of specialization has come up, and it's really timely for the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. We are starting, as of 2024, a master's degree will be required. So it caused great stress among the educators and the practitioners, but it really makes sense because we need to compete with the other health professions. I have nothing to disclose. Hopefully by the time we're done talking, you'll be aware of supporting the goals of the profession while maintaining an appropriate scope of practice. And when we talk about scope of practice, we have many documents in our country. You probably have one too. In other words, I can't go in and practice diabetes, management unless I have the appropriate certification and specialization, et cetera. So scope of practice is pretty much delineating what you're able to do and not able to do. Hopefully you'll think about some new skills and attitudes that you need for autonomous practice, and through I have the word clinical specialization, but it really is whatever you wish to do, whether it's food service director, community practitioner, so whatever you want to do, and establishing new personal goals for your own performance improvement. There was a visioning report that came out a few years ago to elevate the educational preparation for the future entry-level. Now, I say RDN is the registered dietitian nutritionist. I know you have a different terminology here, but we added the word nutrition because around the world, it's mostly nutriologists and other languages. So we wanted to make sure that we owned the title of RDN, and so we went through the government process to do that. We want to help you improve the public health and healthcare outcomes. We hope that you are becoming more aware of the amount of knowledge and skills that you're needed for entry-level health positions. And we know that virtually all allied health professions require some postgraduate education for entry level. So again, we wanted to be comparable. We hope that you will have credibility, self-esteem, and that your compensation will be adequate to match your increased skills. So we looked at how we measured up, and we looked at the other health professions. 11 of the 16 health diagnosing and treating practitioners required practice doctorates for entry level into their profession. So pharmacy, physical therapy, and I think occupational therapy is moving in that direction as well. So again, we were sitting back with our baccalaureate degree saying, okay, let's get competitive in the field. We wanted to prepare practitioners at the master's degree level. One required either a master's degree or a practice doctorate, and dietetics has been one of several professions which has traditionally educated entry level at the baccalaureate degree level. And we said to ourselves, if you're afraid of going too far, you're not going to ever go far enough. And so we want to make sure that we are competitive. So let's think about, the word I want to use during this talk is autonomy. It's the urge to direct our own lives. We want to have mastery, the desire to get better and better at something that matters. And we want to have purpose, the yearning to do what we do in the service of something larger than ourselves. And I think that's why we've chosen this profession. Now, this, of course, is cute. This is probably a wife saying to her husband, keep up the good work, and soon I might grant you limited autonomy. So, enhancing mastery and autonomy as a specialist is important. Our goal is to help dietitians practice as autonomous, specialized professionals, exercising professional judgment without having to wait for doctor's approval or orders to intervene. So we're getting there. We want to enhance our professional image, our identity, and influence that we have as clinicians, mostly within healthcare, with other health professions and with our patients and our clients. And we want to identify the traits and skills required to demonstrate that readiness for autonomous practice. My story, my first job was as a clinical dietitian. We had a patient scheduled for surgery the next day, actually gastrointestinal surgery the next day. And he was ordered a clear liquid diet. And when I went in to visit him, he was eating fried chicken. So I documented in the chart that he really wasn't ready for that surgery. He was going to be delayed, et cetera. Well, the surgeon saw that note, and he called me up. He said, who is this Miss Escott? Get her up here right now. And he scolded me, and he said, nutrition has nothing to do with surgery. I said, oh, excuse me, you can't heal that wound without good nutrition. And after that, he started ordering my services. So I thought, well, well done. I was able to speak up. And I think sometimes we're afraid of doctors, but one of my good friends, a doctor who is a pathologist, said, Sylvia, you have more science behind you than we do. It's the practice of medicine. It's the science of nutrition. It's like, yes. Really, when you think about it, it is the practice of medicine. And things change for them all the time, where we have the science that we're building on all the time. So we have to remember that. Autonomy is a key factor. It's an essential capacity required for us to lead and enhance nutritional inputs for human and environmental health. We should acquire the highest professional competencies to enable responsible and effective autonomy activity in our varied settings where we might practice. Autonomy can contribute significantly as a key skill for bottom-up and top-down collaborations, for private and public service, for intervention in individuals, communities, population, and the food chain, and for greater leadership and expansion to new areas. So autonomy is a highly motivating factor for healthcare professionals. We did a study, a study was done on motivational factors of healthcare workers. They studied doctors, nurses, paramedical staff, and they showed that autonomy is increasingly important for professionals in leadership positions, especially for females. So if you have that sense of autonomy, you feel like you can accomplish more. Autonomy's contribution to work satisfaction is higher among doctors and in leading positions than in nurses and paramedical staff. So again, if you're a doctor, you get to make big decisions, and the onus is on your shoulders to make those right decisions. Autonomy becomes increasingly paramount with advanced professional practice and perception of leadership potential. And autonomy as a satisfaction factor, you can see different things across the board, but autonomy is really important in regard to age in particular. So the longer you've been in the field, you want to have more autonomy, be able to make your own decisions, not have somebody supervise over your shoulder. Motivators, we know that autonomy becomes increasingly important with age, specialization, and professional maturation. So that word specialization, again, the more you have as strength and skill and knowledge behind you, the more autonomous you will be able to feel and you'll be able to demonstrate. In the hospital setting, through the medical hierarchy and teamwork, they're often perceived as contradictory to autonomy. Appropriately applied expertise can magnify the range and quality of the dietitian nutritionist contribution of the team. So again, we know that the doctor is the head of the team. We are supportive of that team. But again, the more you are able to speak up, perhaps in team rounds or different places, the more confident you will feel and the more respected you will be. In personalized nutrition, we know that genetics is a big factor now. Autonomy is especially needed for designing and applying personal, multifaceted, and preventive lifestyles, for support in continuous preventive lifestyle, for extending life expectancy, for improving quality of the extended years of life, and for managing chronic ailments, including disabilities, depression, cognitive decline, and so on. In the healthcare and community, the RDN makes informed decisions and recommendations based on nutrition, medical data, charts, input from patients and families and relatives. In the community, the autonomous RDN collaborates with social services and uses available resources to address poverty, literacy, and belief systems that may reduce human potential. So depending on where we are, we have different skill sets. So what does this mean? Our expectations would be that we want to be professional and accountable in all elements of our work. We want to keep our practices up to date and informed by developments in legislation, local and national guidance and research, and you want to maintain high standards to protect yourself, your colleagues, and the people with whom you work. We also want to manage perceptions, the perceptions of others. In a market-driven workplace, dietetics is not often seen as a successful business option. Dietitians are not seen as autonomous professionals, as they must often wait for doctors to order their services. And the perception of ourselves, the conflict between perception of dietetics as a profession and dietitians as just part of the workforce or labor force, thinking about numbers instead of quality of services that we provide. So we want to maintain our effectiveness with high academic standards, professional knowledge, your skills and clinical specialization, maintaining performance expectations, and having self-regulatory behaviors, keeping your house in order, in other words, staying current, etc. Having sanctions, or knowing that there are sanctions of the profession, such as from licensure, code of good conduct, ethics, and things like that. We want to follow those and live up to them. We want to also maintain our professional attributes. And I think probably you look at the core of that and they're talking about resilience. And where does that come from? Having a low sense of harm. In other words, harm avoidance. You want to actually take some risks. You want to be careful about the risks you take, but you want to think it through. You want to be persistent. You want to be highly cooperative with others. And you want to have high self-directedness. So all of these lead to a meaningful career. Again, you want to follow your own code of ethics and scope of practice within your country and your profession. Ethics, of course, is looking at integrity and having value, honor, making wise choices, having a conscience, fairness, being responsible, doing the right things, and I always say it's doing the right things right the first time, being honest, and maintaining your principles. You also want to demonstrate your competency. With competency-based education and training, you lead to what they call entrustable professional activities, or EPAs. Those are the discrete activities that are suitable for entrustment to a trainee after demonstrating sufficient competence. So as an internship director, I would be in charge of leading students to demonstrate competency so that they could work independently and not have a supervisor monitoring their work. And hopefully you're all at that point, or you're getting there as students. And we can't forget that it's interprofessional practice. We don't practice in a vacuum. We practice as part of a team, no matter where you are, food service, etc. I like this slide, too, with what they call knowledge management. And none of us is as smart as all of us. I shouldn't admit this, but I just found a good article on stupidity that was written by a neuropsychologist, or maybe it was a neuropsychiatrist, who said that in the U.S. right now, we have some people in our legislature who are behaving stupidly, which means they do not know what they don't know. And that's dangerous, isn't it? Because things happen as a consequence. And so we have to realize what we don't know. And the more humble you are and the more you realize, I don't know it all. I will go look. I will go find the information. It's important to do that, to consume content and to curate it. In other words, put it through your mind and say, I think this is real, or I think this is really false information, and not to behave stupidly, right? And of course, to collaborate with others to gain more information. Also, thinking about problem-based learning is very effective. It facilitates critical thinking, self-directed learning, collaboration, and communication skills. And unlike lecturing that mainly disseminates information, which is what I'm doing now, I apologize, and activates the left brain, problem-based learning encourages whole brain thinking and learning, and that's important. So you want to learn it, apply it, start, deal with the patient and the problem, and then identify what's missing, and the circle goes around again. You want to think, too, about power and autonomy. Dietitians respond to existing power relationships by building and maintaining good relationships, advocating on behalf of their patients, negotiating decisions with other healthcare staff when in pursuit of improved health and nutrition-related outcomes for their patients. We also want to think about the elements of autonomy variance. What comes into play if you're not performing autonomously? Well, there might be medical practitioner nutrition knowledge. It might be limited, like the surgeon that I dealt with. He didn't know that nutrition healed the wounds that he was making, right? Complexity of the medical case. Again, it may be something beyond your current knowledge, and you may have to go talk to the doctor about the issue. You want to know that the dietitian is familiar with the medical team, and the dietitian knowledge and experience, that specialization will make a difference. So again, I know you've got specialization in obesity and geriatric or gerontology, which I think is two very wise decisions to make. That's where the world is going, right? You also want to have communication skills. You want to be able to articulate and explain concepts clearly. You want to adapt communication styles for different people. Of course, if you're dealing with a highly educated individual, you speak differently than if you're speaking with a patient who has no education, no knowledge of nutrition. And you want to understand the needs of others and demonstrate empathy. You want to have the ability to read and write, to present, to listen, to influence and persuade. You want to have the ability to have difficult conversations and to handle conflict effectively. Those are the hard ones, right? Maybe you're dealing with hospice patients and you're talking with the family members about the need to stop feeding somebody or to remove a tube feeding. Those are very difficult conversations. When I worked in a nursing home, we had an 8-bed inpatient hospice unit. And so we basically said, whatever somebody wants, they can have whatever they want to eat. There's a little kitchen. They could make something if they wanted to. But we did not pursue aggressive, TPN or tube feeding and things like that unless it was necessary. And basically by then you're talking with family about letting go. And I'll give you my example. My mother lived with us the last 5 years of her life, and she was in the end, she had congestive heart failure and was in hospice care. And at the end, we basically, because I knew how to handle that, we had given her morphine, and she felt we had a hospital bed for her because she had had hip replacement or hip surgery. And she fell out of her bed, was on the floor, and my husband had gone to play poker. I called him back. I said, come back, help me put her back in the bed. So we got her in the bed, and we knew that was probably the end of her life. And she didn't speak or eat or drink anything for a week before she passed away. And it was very peaceful. And actually, if you know that at the end of life, you really don't have a lot of nerve sensation, so it's not very painful. And so because I knew that, we knew that we weren't going to be aggressively doing anything else. And it was very peaceful and very beautiful. So I think sometimes we have to have those conversations with family members that, it's really not up to us to be aggressive. We also have to negotiate, network, and work in teams effectively. Other important traits, you want to have a curiosity for learning that makes a positive difference to others. You want to have a passion to engage locally, globally when appropriate. Have highly developed skills in research, inquiry, and problem solving. It doesn't mean you have to be a researcher like Dr. Edgar. Thank you for inviting me. But you want to be curious. Like the question about AI. I'm curious. I don't know. I don't know what it will mean for our profession. Maybe there are wonderful things that we just haven't thought about. You want to have intellectual autonomy to critically evaluate ideas, evidence, and experiences from an open-minded and reasoned perspective. And you want to have reflective awareness of ethical dimensions and responsibilities to others, and have personal resilience, learning how to deal with failure and to bounce back. We're not all perfect, and we make mistakes, and we contemplate them. We say, What would I do differently next time? When I think about when I started out in the profession, the diet for a peptic ulcer was cream and milk. I don't know if anybody remembers that. And it was an awful diet. And it actually really didn't make a difference because now we know it's a H. pylori bacterium that causes this. It's like, oh my goodness, we did this. And I keep thinking, I'll apologize in my mind to the patients I put on that diet because, we just didn't know what we didn't know. You want to have independent thinking. You want to have exercising of personal judgment and initiative. You want to think outside the box. You want to be creative and inventive from time to time. You want to be adaptable, managing complexity and your own self-direction. You want to have strong decision-making abilities by collaborating and debating to effectively test, modify, and strengthen your own views. You want to be positively assertive and confident without being arrogant. And that's a tough one, isn't it? Sometimes, I don't know, sometimes I've been accused of overdoing my knowledge base, so it's like you have to be careful. You have to think of your audience, like who are you dealing with? Will they understand that you know what you know? Okay. It's not going. Oh, there we go. So how do you develop clinical autonomy or autonomy in general? Working toward a set goal and taking corrective action when needed. You want to do these 3 steps. You want to think strategically. You want to think and prevent if you can. What should and could be, what's possible. You want to think about the various processes, what are best practices, what are the standards that affect what I'm doing. You want to think about standardization that anticipates change and creates better ways or methods to become more productive. And then you want to think about, you want to act by being tactical, keep up, what is appropriate. You want to think about the processes that organize and prioritize the present productivity in a way or manner that hits the goals that you have. And then thinking about the roadblocks, react, what went wrong, pop-ups, holding us back, things like that. Tyranny of the urgent. Sometimes you do something quickly that you think later, oh, I should have done it differently, and sometimes we get caught up in that. So you want to think about these issues. Thinking back again to my work in the nursing home, we had a patient who really needed a tube feeding. She was losing weight, and she'd been there. She didn't have any family, but she had a legal guardian. And the legal guardian at the time kept saying, no tube feeding, no tube feeding, no tube feeding. Well, gradually you're going to lose weight and get pressure ulcers and all the other, dehydration and all the other consequences. Well, a new legal guardian comes along and says, oh, yes, we should tube feed. Well, by then, too little, too late, if you know what I mean, you can't really revive a skeleton that well. So she did pass away. And when the state came in to do a survey, they said, why didn't you speak up? Why didn't you? You knew better. You knew better than the legal guardian. You knew better than the doctor who went along with the legal guardian. You knew what would happen. So we developed a form called the consequences of not feeding somebody, the consequences of not feeding somebody. And we listed all all the different features that would be seen. And then we would have that for a legal guardian, for a family member. We would sit down and say, if you don't feed your mother or if you don't feed this person, this is what will happen and this is how they will pass away. And it was very helpful because then some people changed their mind and said, oh yes, we should tube feed early in the situation rather than too little too late. So, I created a solution to the problem that I had encountered. And not that, we weren't cited for that. It was mentioned that this had happened and that we didn't solve it. So, you look at your regulatory body also, and, we are the knowledgeable people. I always say that a pharmacist would correct an erroneous prescription, wouldn't they? They wouldn't, within their practice, allow that to happen. Well, we must do the same. We must correct erroneous decisions by people who don't know nutrition, right? So we have to be our own best advocate and advocate for the patient. You want to enhance your freedom to work without micromanagement. And that means the pace at which your work is completed, the order of its completion. Again, you don't want some doctor telling you, we'll do this before this. You don't want to have to be micromanaged. So what are our challenges? Our barriers would be confidence, maybe disbelief in your own competence. Having unrealistic expectations for yourself, maybe at the point of your career. Most of you are new learners or new practitioners, and so You will make mistakes, and again, you will rethink them and say, next time I will do it this way, or I will do something earlier, or I will do something later. You have to think of your own expectations. Sometimes we cross boundaries with others. So again, in the U.S., you now can write prescriptions for tube feeding if you are qualified within your facility, and everybody's in agreement, and it's documented, and it's in the human resource record that you have that you are competent to do this. But again, it takes some steps to get to that point. So you don't want to cross the boundaries unless you have that evidence of competency behind you. Thinking about allocation of responsibilities, maybe you don't have the resources, perhaps it's unclear allocation of resources, maybe you have a knowledge gap, or you don't have feedback on knowing what is expected. So remember the benefits of autonomy: increased job satisfaction, greater engagement and motivation, a stronger culture of trust. Employees that are trusted by their colleagues strive to deliver above the expectations. Enhanced employee retention, minimizing workplace disruption. You'll have encouragement of creativity and innovation, greater productivity, a stronger sense of being valued, leadership development through self-reliance and resilience. You'll have innovation and readiness for new skill development, and you'll have growth mindset. So that autonomous persona will really develop. And basically, competency is the issue. The individual practitioner must demonstrate consistent competency to be given special recognition and privileges. So again, find out what you don't know and fix it, and think it through and admit if you don't know something, and I'll find out and I'll get back to you, whatever it might take. So 3 things to remember. The key factors include a positive professional identity, clear roles and responsibilities, clinical specialization, and respect. Autonomy requires competency in knowledge and skills, and respect comes from excellent performance. And you have to have courage. Have the courage to take charge in situations where you are responsible. And you've got this, right? You've got autonomy. And I think I admit I speak fast, I'm sorry. So hopefully you all understood. Are there questions or comments?
¿Alguien tiene alguna pregunta? Allá atrás. Hasta allá. Levanta tu mano, por favor, Poncho. Hasta allá.
Hello.
Hello.
So earlier on you were talking about some problems in the legislation. I think I got the reference. I don't know. But there was some problems with the board member of the ISSN, and who was basically telling stupid things, stupid claims. But anyway, some people didn't know he was talking nonsense. But to normal people who are not registered dietitians, he was making good arguments. But how do we deal with appeal to authority fallacy and basically gaining
Trust, probably.
trust, trust and
Respect.
yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, how do we credibility? How do we gain credibility when we are new to the world, when we are barely getting out of university? And
Well, remind people that you have an educated background and that you have the science that you've studied, and that you want to share credible information and continue to look at the research. Lots of times I'll say to people, years ago this is what we thought, and now about cholesterol, for example. Cholesterol, you couldn't eat shrimp, things like that, and now we know that's wrong. And so we we can admit that we've learned new things. And I always say that the science of nutrition is really 150 years old or something like that. It's one of the youngest sciences, and it's continually evolving as we learn more things. So what we know today is XYZ, like trying to help by saying we know this to be true today, and we believe that this is the confirmed response. Sometimes social media is helpful. You can post something informative and perhaps correct a little bit of the erroneous conclusion that people might have made by leaders in unknowing positions. So I think sometimes I try to do that. I don't have to tell you whether I'm Republican or Democrat in my country, but I sometimes just post something useful, I think, with maybe a reference, and maybe people respond to me and say, well, thank you for posting that. So sometimes just being available to share an educated opinion is useful. Good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah.
¿Alguien más tiene una pregunta?
Hi. Instead of the disbelief of other people on us, like I feel like maybe a lot of us feel like imposter syndrome. Like how can we deal with the disbelief on ourselves?
Mm-hmm. Again, I think you have to realize, that you know more than the average member of the public. You have been educated in this field. You've got science behind you. So you have to, I don't know. Trust yourself. Yeah, just trust yourself and trust your knowledge base, and then be gentle with those who don't have this background. Because, I'm thinking about my mother growing up. We used to have all kinds of vitamins and, supplements in the cupboard. And, later when I understood more, I understood that was a waste of money. So you have to be gentle and let them have safe beliefs, and then correct those that are dangerous. But don't think that you're an imposter. You have this knowledge within our field. Now, you might be an imposter in medicine or, an imposter in pharmacy, but you do have more knowledge, and you should trust yourself and believe in your own credibility. And if you don't know the answers, again, look them up again and correct your erroneous thought processes. But you are not an imposter at this point.
Thank you.
¿Alguien tiene otra pregunta?
Hi.
Hi.
I really like your ponency, so thank you.
Thank you.
I was wondering, autonomy, how does that apply? For example, in countries like the USA, it's known for being very expensive public health care. For example, here in Mexico, you can do autonomy in less expensive ways, but applying to the policies, how do we apply that to your country?
To the U.S. or to Mexico?
To U.S.
I'm sorry, I don't think I quite understand. So it's the expensiveness of public health care, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, policies in USA are quite good, but they're not quite accessible to all population, for example.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
Yeah, well, our public health system is pretty effective if people know about it. You can go to a health department and have most kinds of treatments for a very inexpensive rate, if not free. So if you understand that, the hospitals, of course, are much more expensive. People's insurance varies greatly. We've tried to make it, nationwide, reasonable rates, but we're not there yet. And of course, drug costs are just crazy. So, and then, you've got the government trying to, help with Medicare, which is for the elderly, or people who are maybe on dialysis and things like that, to manage their costs. It's complicated, and it's not easy for people to finagle through the system to find reasonable health care. But health departments are a good place to start, and they are every county, every city usually has a large health department where people can go to begin their health care if necessary. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yes, thank you.
Okay.
¿Alguien más tiene alguna duda, una pregunta? ¿No? ¿Nadie? Bueno, okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much,
Thank you.
Professor Sylvia. It's a great honor for us having you here down in Mexico. I know it must be hard getting in a plane, coming over here.
I love Mexico.
Thank you.
I have to
Thank you
admit,
very
my
much.
daughter last night said, "Where are you?" I said, "I'm in Mexico." She said, "Are you moving there?" It's like, I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, it's a great honor for us having you here, especially, well, in the field of nutrition, we all know you very well.
Thank you.
And so it's awesome.
Thank you.
Everything you said, I think it's very important for us to learn and to acknowledge that we have all of the
tools, the tools.
all the tools
yeah.
to actually be successful out there. We just have to trust a little bit more in ourselves and do it.
Yes.
So thank you very much.
You're
We have a recognition for you
Oh, thank you
and
so
a
much.
small present for you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh,